Have you ever encountered a presence while traveling? Maybe you were alone in a hotel room or camping in the woods and you heard a noise that you couldn't explain. Or perhaps you saw something that shouldn't have been there. Have you ever experienced a moment that made you feel like you were not alone? If you have, you know how unsettling it can be. In this video, we will explore a terrifying experience that happened to a traveler who rented an isolated Airbnb. One stormy night, he discovered something strange in the house that he couldn't explain. Let's dive into the chilling tale and find out what secrets does the old house hold. Our story begins with a man who wanted to take a solo trip to a remote cabin in Colorado. He decided to break up the long drive with an overnight stay in a small town, and that's when he found the Airbnb. Located in a town that wasn't even on most maps, the house looked perfect for his needs. Eager to rest, he paid for the rental and set off towards the location. When he got closer, though, the weather started to worsen. Heavy rain poured down in sheets, making the drive slower and more treacherous. As he neared the end of the dirt road leading to the house, the wind began howling through the trees, whipping them back and forth in a violent dance. Thunder cracked overhead, rattling him with its sudden boom. Yet he pressed on, determined to reach the shelter of the isolated house. By the time he finally turned into the long gravel driveway, the storm had reached its peak. Rain pounded the roof of his car, making it difficult to hear anything else. But as he stepped out of his vehicle, he realized he was not alone. The wind carried his voice across the empty fields, whispering tales of loneliness and abandonment. As he approached the front door, his hand trembled as he reached out to knock. But just as his knuckles made contact with the wood, the door swung open, revealing a darkened interior. Startled by the sudden movement, he paused for a moment, unsure if he should enter. Hesitantly, he stepped inside and shut the door behind him. The interior of the house was just as eerie as its exterior. Shadows danced in the flickering light from his phone screen, stretching and contorting into menacing shapes on the walls. He explored further into the house, each creak of the floorboards and each rustle of the wind sending a shiver down his spine. The house was unnervingly silent, amplifying the beating of his own heart and the pounding of the rain against the windows. As he continued exploring, he noticed that the silence was broken only by the sound of his own footsteps and the relentless rain. He called out into the darkness, his voice echoing in the vast emptiness. No response came back to him, only silence. The realization that he was completely alone in the deserted house washed over him, bringing with it a sense of dread and isolation. As the minutes ticked by, the storm outside intensified, shaking the very foundations of the old house. Thunder rumbled, shaking the windows and rattling the doors. Suddenly, there was a crash from upstairs, followed by a heavy thud. He froze, listening intently, but there was only silence. Perhaps it was just the wind, he thought, trying to convince himself, but a deep-seated fear had taken root within him. He made his way to the living room, seeking comfort in its familiarity. As he sank onto the couch, exhaustion began to pull at him. Despite his efforts to shake off the unsettling feeling that had permeated the house, he found himself succumbing to the fatigue of the long journey. As darkness enveloped the room, he turned on the lamp on the side table, its warm glow casting long shadows on the walls. Despite the cozy light, the room seemed to darken even more. He shrugged off the feeling, deciding to focus on getting some sleep. But as he lay in the darkness, he could have sworn he heard a whisper. Soft and indistinct, it seemed to come from the hallway that led to the bedroom. He dismissed it as a figment of his imagination, brought on by the storm and his own weariness. With a sigh, he closed his eyes and tried to drift off to sleep. It wasn't long before he heard a sound. It was slow and deliberate, like someone walking carefully. He opened his eyes and listened intently. The sound came again. This time it was closer. Someone was walking in the hallway outside his room. A wave of panic surged through him. Was he alone in the house after all? What was out there? He sat frozen on the bed, his heart pounding in his chest, listening intently. As the footsteps drew nearer, he could hear the distinct sound of someone approaching his room. His breathing quickened as the footsteps stopped right outside the door. Fear gripped him, paralyzing him with terror. Then, to his horror, the doorknob began to turn slowly, as if someone was attempting to push the door open. He screamed, scrambling backwards until his head hit the wall. His eyes wide with terror, he watched as the door creaked open, revealing a pitch-black hallway. But when he strained to see inside, he could make out the faintest of outlines in the darkness. A tall, gaunt figure stood in the doorway, its eyes glinting with an eerie light. It took a step forward, and he flinched, believing that it was coming towards him. However, the figure remained motionless, and he eventually relaxed slightly, although fear still coursed through his veins. Struggling to calm his racing heart, he forced himself to turn on the bedside lamp. Its soft glow revealed nothing in the room, but he could see the closet door, which had been slightly ajar before, was now wide open. The sight sent another wave of terror through him. He could feel his blood running cold. Should he investigate? Was it safe? Unable to bring himself to move, he sat there frozen, his gaze fixed on the closet door. It felt as if the room was closing in on him, suffocating him with its dark secrets. Finally, summoning a sliver of courage, he rose from the bed and walked slowly towards the closet. His hand trembled as he reached out to open it wider. Inside, all he saw was a gaping blackness. Hesitantly, he stepped closer, peering into the darkness. His eyes struggled to pierce the gloom, but it seemed to swallow everything whole. Summoning a deep breath, he decided to venture inside. The stench of mildew and decay hit him immediately. Musty air filled his lungs as he moved deeper into the cramped space. As his eyes adjusted, he began to see outlines in the darkness. Clothes hung from the ceiling, their shadows twisted into grotesque shapes. Boxes were stacked precariously, hiding whatever secrets they held close. But something else caught his attention. On the floor, half hidden under a pile of old fabric, was a rocking chair. It swayed gently, as if pushed by an invisible hand. A chill went down his spine. Why was there a rocking chair in the closet? And why was it moving on its own? He stumbled back, knocking over a box. The sound echoed in the confined space, and he jumped, startled by the noise. He turned quickly, searching for the source of the disturbance, but saw nothing. He knew he should leave, but his feet seemed rooted to the spot. He was frozen with a mix of fear and morbid curiosity. Suddenly he heard a soft whisper. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. His name was spoken, and the voice was filled with an otherworldly echo. Panicked, he rushed to the closet door, flinging it open and stumbling out into the hallway. He raced down the hall, desperate to escape the suffocating darkness of the closet and the sinister voice that had called his name. He burst through the front door and ran to his car. His hands shaking, he fumbled for his keys. Once in the car, he slammed the door shut and sped away, leaving the eerie house behind. The engine roared in his ears, drowning out the whispers of the wind and the voice that pursued him. He dared not look back. He didn't want to see the dark figure standing on the porch, beckoning to him, or the closet door swinging open as if inviting him back into its darkness. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the terror subsided, leaving him shaking and breathless. His heart hammered against his ribs, and he could feel the echoes of the whispers in his mind. The image of the tall, gaunt figure burned in his memory, its eyes boring into his soul. He knew he had escaped, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was not truly free. Days turned into weeks, but he couldn't shake off the haunting experience. He tried to tell his friends, but their puzzled expressions and dismissive words only made him feel more isolated. He knew what he had seen and heard, and no amount of skepticism could change that. The encounter had shaken him to his core, leaving him with a lingering sense of dread and uncertainty. Did he imagine it all? Was it a hallucination brought on by the storm and his exhaustion? Or did he truly experience a terrifying glimpse into the unknown? So what do you think he experienced? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe for more scary videos.